Welcome to the Madness and Grace podcast, where we explore the connection between mental health and faith. I'm Dr. Matthew Stanford, neuroscientist, author, and mental health advocate.
And I'm Dr. Madeline Stiers, therapist and trauma researcher. We're so glad you're joining us today. Each week, we have authentic conversations about personal stories, we share professional insights, and explore the meaningful ways faith can influence mental well-being.
Whether you're seeking comfort, understanding, or simply a new perspective, we're here to journey with you. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's dive into today's conversation. Welcome back. And today I think we have a great conversation related to mental health and faith on social media. It is, without a doubt, the topic that I get today, these days, more than any other. I get parents, grandparents asking me constantly about the effects of social media, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. And, I thought we'd talk about this a little bit today. We can give you some thoughts. I can talk a little bit about what the research shows. But at the end of the day, I think a takeaway on this is that moderation is always better than excess with anything. And parents should be actively involved in the nurturing of their children and don't leave that to others, groups, other devices, other whatever. And if either one of those is in any way violated, then you got a problem. So social media, really didn't start until, in fact, a lot of times people look at maybe 2010 as kind of the dawn of the social media age. I think smartphones kind of popped on the scene kind of in the late first decade of this century, maybe 2007-ish, 2006. And then you get social media kind of coming along in 2010. So we do see some pretty significant changes as a result of that. But I can tell you that the data clearly demonstrates we already had a pretty significant decline in mental health, particularly among young people, well before social media hit the scene. So social media has caused some problems. And certainly there are some good aspects to social media, but there's no doubt, for instance, that you find for people who are heavy social media users, which are unfortunately most teenagers these days and young adults, increases anxiety, depression, sleep disruption, body image issues. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. Plus, in relationship to social media, you see all kinds of issues related to kind of online bullying and kind of people comparison issues. Where they're looking at what they know to be an kind of impossible, idealized self that they can never meet the standard, but yet it does affect them psychologically. So I think we have a lot of things to talk about today. And Manny, what are kind of your experiences with social media in the clinic and with clients?
Well, Matt, most of the clients that we see in the clinic are adults. So what we deal with typically is, kind of unfavorable social comparison that individuals have through social media. We see less relational connections. People aren't getting out and engaging in the world in the way that you kind of had to prior to this. They feel like they'll report that they're socially engaged, but they're actually not really getting out and talking with individuals. And that's a problem because we know that social support is a protective factor for people who are struggling with their mental health. We do have parents who are struggling with how do I regulate and manage my child's social media and what does that look like? And here's the thing: is it's not just social media. When you say social media, I think like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm sure there's other ones that I'm not aware of. But really, it's just the internet, right? Like
Right.
A recent story that I have had told to me is there's a family that I was working with, and their elementary school child was on an iPad and was on the YouTube Kids app, watching videos of cartoons, and then it ends, and 10 seconds later a new one starts, and then it ends, and 10 seconds later. And this algorithm just kind of keeps building and building until it turns into from cartoons to kind of like anime to kind of more risque anime to where this child ultimately ended up watching essentially anime porn on YouTube's children filtered app or whatever, exactly how that works. And then went to school, was talking about it, and was having inappropriate conversations with other young children. And it kind of blew up into this whole big situation. And the parents were like, we thought we were monitoring it. So you kind of see the social.
Wait, let's talk about this example, because this is a great example. This is a great example that you've used here. So let's talk about this more deeply. So what's the problem here? What was the mistake? Why, is this social media's fault?
No. So the mistake, there's a multitude of mistakes that you can pinpoint. And we're not I don't want to blame anybody or put any blame on it. But, parents think that they're monitoring social media and technology use. What does that mean? You're monitoring it. You have app safety features on, right? But how well did they function? This one, it failed. Are you sitting there watching the shows with them?
It was YouTube Kids. So that was probably what the parent thought. I put them on a kid-friendly site.
Right. And, how long is the child on that? There's it just keeps rolling videos, and I don't know the details of it specifically, but I'm talking a little bit broader. This situation is not uncommon. This has happened.
No. And that's why I thought it's such a great example.
Yeah.
And why, all of a sudden the parents are shocked that their child was involved or said this, or they saw, and they would say, well, we have to stop this. We have to stop there being an opportunity for these children to do this. And the reality is that never had to happen, ever.
Right.
So I remember when I was, I'm much older than you are. And so when I was a child, I remember the argument was that people were letting TV be
rot your brain.
Yeah, TV's going to rot your brain. So you put your kid in front of TV for hours. So let's say you put your kid in front of TV for hours just watching just perfectly appropriate cartoons, okay? Trying to think of a perfectly appropriate cartoon, Bugs Bunny. I don't know. So, and he's going to watch that for 5 hours a day. Would anybody think that was a good thing?
No.
Doesn't matter what
become a baby.
Right, exactly. And that's what happened with that iPad right there, is it had become a babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's an opportunity for either AI or some nefarious individual that wants to, get more connections on their porn site or whatever, to put something in there that your child has access to.
This is how human trafficking. So we've gone from a child who's watching something inappropriate on YouTube, accidentally being exposed to that, to human trafficking. And it's very real. Like Instagram, Snapchat, some of the more common younger social media things that I can't think of right now, that is how predators are gaining access to young, vulnerable individuals. And they're promising them the world, and they're giving them the attention that they may not be getting because they're not out socializing like we were when we were younger. And they go meet up with someone. I mean, even online dating is common now, right? And I'm not saying high schoolers should be doing that sort of thing, but it's not outside of the realm of totally abnormal to meet someone online. For women, they should not be doing that. And basically you have, if you're not monitoring your child's technology use, you are allowing, maybe I'm being dramatic, there is an opportunity for a predator to enter your home in a way that was not possible when you and I were younger.
And monitoring is more than you turning on the filter, which children can turn off in an instant, or putting them on a supposedly child-safe. There is no child-safe site. It doesn't exist. There are children's sites, but then now it's just that much easier for the nefarious person to know where they are. And so, there's a great article that came out in 2017. I mean, it's just a seminal article in relationship to social media and adolescence. It was I think you say the last person's name, Twinge. It's just a classic article. And it found that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have higher risk for mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. It's a huge study. And what's frightening about that came out in 2017. Okay. So if they spent more than 3 hours, okay. So you might say to yourself, oh, because I know in 2017, people were like, oh my gosh, that's only 7 years after the dawn of the social media. 3 hours. Oh, that's so much. Well, a study came out in 2023, very large study looking at the kind of usage of social media among 13 to 17-year-olds. And what they found is that on average, 13 to 17-year-olds in the United States spend 4.8 hours a day on social media, which means that the average adolescent, I'm not talking about those who spend a lot of time on, the average adolescent is at a higher risk for mental health problems in the United States simply because of their social media use. That's been demonstrated. And now the average adolescent is spending many hours more than what is necessary for that. Why is that? Why are they doing that? I'm not saying that there isn't a draw. I should say, why are they being allowed to do that? And so kids do not date as often anymore. Adolescents do not. They do not go out with their friends as often. They get their driver's license later. You can just go on and on and on. They will literally sit in their rooms at night and text each other or engage each other through these social media apps rather than engaging each other in person. It has altered the way they interact with people. And so they're losing their ability to support each other emotionally or receive emotional support. And they're being isolated, which makes them not only more prone to things like depression and anxiety, but also more prone to be victimized because there's no kind of protective net around them. Yeah. And so all of this is happening. Now, again, I get a lot of parents that come to me. I'm really going to tick a lot of people off on this episode. I'm sorry to say that. I get this so often that I really can't tell you how often I'm asked, at least every day. And then that's not to exaggerate. But I get an email or I get a phone call it's just really unbelievable how often I'm asked about this. If I give a talk somewhere, even if I don't talk on social media, one of the first questions I'll get is on social media. And it's usually put into the context of how can we protect our children from these horrible social media companies that are out there trying to destroy our young people. And, I have no great love for social media companies for any number of reasons, but it's real easy to do that.
Take the phone away.
You have to not let them have and you have to limit their use of it. And then parents will tell me, oh, well, I can't do that. They need their phone for safety reasons. They need this, they need that. They have to, let me just give you just some of the practicals, and then we can talk about that. The practicals that I give families, okay? And one of these is you're going to consider extreme. It's not you, but you out there. Number one, you have to model balanced use, okay? I got plenty of parents that are telling me my kid is addicted to social media, and they're addicted to social media, and they're on their phones just as much as their kid, and so you got to model that. You got to have boundaries. You got to have times where there is no social media use for the family and everybody puts their phone in a phone basket or something for dinner or whatever. Okay. I mean, you got to demonstrate that people can put these things down and have a normal.
And the world doesn't end. Yeah.
You have to talk openly about mental health issues, online danger, comparison culture, social media use, concerns you're having about your own social media. You've got to be open about these things if you ever hope that they're going to talk to you, if they're having a problem or there's a concern. You have to promote and demonstrate real connection. You have to force your children to go outside and play. You have to force your children to invite their friends over. You have to send your kids over to other houses. You have to get your kids involved in sports. You have to get your kids involved in church youth group. And when they go to those things, you have to make sure that they're going to things where they're not just sitting around using their phones. So, I mean, you have to promote that real connection, not just social media connection. You really have to help them with digital discernment, and that is at a age appropriate level. Like you just described, Maddie, I mean, there are predators out there, and that is one big risk. But even if you aren't become a target of a predator, social media use in and of itself is damaging.
Absolutely.
Period. That's what the data shows. So I think all of those, so that's part of that conversation. And then here's my extremist fifth one to add to that. You need to delay your child's engagement with social media as long as you possibly can.
So
Preferably to at least the age of 16.
do you mean social media as in like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or do you mean like the apps like YouTube? And
I'm not sure that they can be separated anymore. And so I would say that they all are just kind of the same thing now. I don't know if the term social media really is going to last much longer, because something like YouTube is not necessarily considered social media. I don't think, it's more entertainment. It's hard to know sometimes because these things overlap so much. But I look at it this way. I look at the alcohol literature. And what I know with the alcohol literature is this. If a child becomes intoxicated, uses alcohol and becomes intoxicated before the age of 14, they have a 5 times greater risk of becoming an alcoholic as an adult than a child who delays the use of alcohol becoming intoxicated after the age of 14. Now, most people might say, oh, well, that's easy. It's illegal for kids to have alcohol before they're, they have to be of age, and that would be easy for me to monitor that. Well, it's easier maybe than you think it is, but it's not that easy. It happens all the time. And we know we have that data, and there's very good data. So we know that delaying the engagement with alcohol to after 14 years old makes it less likely that a person's going to become an alcoholic as an adult. Well, if you will delay the use of social media or the use of these kind of electronic devices to a later period, then, and really what we're talking about are smartphones. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
We're not talking about telephones. Okay? And we're not talking about a flip phone here.
Yeah.
We're talking about smartphones. Okay. If you delayed the use of that, then your child is more likely not to have these mental health care problems and more likely to socialize appropriately, more likely to have better relationships, more likely to communicate better. I mean,
less
it's
likely
just
to be
obvious.
victimized.
Right. Less likely to be a victim. Right. Exactly. I mean, it's an obvious. And, when parents tell me, oh, well, they do all these activities, they have to have a phone so they can be safe. If that's your take on that, buy them a flip phone. Plenty of companies make them now. They make them for old people. Sorry, old people. I'm pointing.
Do you have a flip phone?
I don't, but I need one. They're made for people who can't handle a flip phone. I mean, like my mom, okay, they can't handle a smartphone. So get one. That's great. Great idea. Hey, wonderful.
Well, and really the only downside, right? Like, sure, you take an iPhone away, there's downsides, you're going to have to deal with the complaining. But if you don't ever introduce that to them until much later, then your, these expectations are tempered and really you only gain from approaching this social media, iPhone, technology. You get your children are going to grow in all of the areas we've just discussed. Your relationship with them is going to develop because you're going to have to be more present with them. Is the other thing is if they don't have the technology to be on, that means they're going to want to talk to you and you're going to have to talk to them. So your relationship hopefully will develop and flourish as well. They'll gain better social cues and awareness, which will help them flourish in adulthood. I mean, there's just so many reasons. And I'm not saying that never let children look at a screen, or that's not, I don't think that we're saying that at all. It's if monitoring is a concern for you, the monitoring that is one way of approaching it is just kind of removing the access, that free reign to technology, because a flip phone is fine. It's Matt, did you have a phone in high school, a cell phone?
They didn't exist.
Huh. And you've made it. You've
Neither did the internet, and you didn't it showed my age. But you're right. We all
become a
made it.
successful human.
We
It's
all yeah. So, a study came out of Stanford a year or two ago. 75% of youth in the United States have an iPhone by the age of 12.6 months. 12 years, 6 months. 75%. Okay. I mean,
so
what are we doing here? I mean, it's just insanity.
it used to be that the average age of a child's first exposure to something pornographic was 13, 14. It is
Right.
9.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
So you're saying that the average age of a child to get their own
That's when 75% have it.
is right. So that means it's not just the iPhones. We're not just talking about iPhones. It is access to free reign of technology. So iPads, TVs, there's smart TV. I mean, it's all.
What I would say is, that's a great example you gave there. What if you walked in and you've got an 8-year-old son and you walked into your living room and he's sitting on the couch and you say, "Hey, buddy, what are you watching?" And you turn and he's got hardcore pornography going on the television set.
Gasp.
You would be appalled, and you would go insane. You would turn it off. You would be so upset. Okay. You would be so upset. Well, when you give him a little screen and you let him go sit away by yourself and you never see what he's looking at.
And kids are not dumb. You can give a toddler an iPhone and they know how to swipe and move better than I do on these. And it's insane. So even if you think you walk up to your child to see what they're doing, they've moved away from what they were doing that they know they shouldn't be doing.
You have to understand you're fighting on multiple fronts, for instance, when it comes to pornography. So let's say you've got a 10-year-old boy and he's got an iPhone and you've turned on the filter. So you think, there's no way he's going to be able to turn that filter off. So he can't get to these things. So here are the fronts you're fighting on. One front you're fighting on is his friends are telling him that they saw some website and he should go look at it. So there's peer pressure. Secondly, you've told him that he shouldn't be looking at that kind of stuff. So he wonders why he shouldn't be looking at that kind of stuff. So he wants to, because he's a 10-year-old boy getting ready to go into puberty in a couple of years, right? So there's his own personal drive to want to do that because we live in a fallen world, okay? And thirdly, is there are external forces that want him to watch it. So there are pornography sites that want him to see it so that he'll get hooked to it. So will start purchasing subscriptions and things like that. And there are predators, I'll just lump them all together, that want him to look at it because they want to somehow get access to him in some way. So you are fighting on so many fronts, but at the end of the day, you gave him the bomb for them to use on him. And so it's time for us to be parents again. And the thing is there's a balance here. There is a balance. I'm not saying get rid of all social media, get rid of all phones, whatever. I'm saying we have to be balanced. We have decided to allow our children to be raised by social media or by information technology, basically. We would never do that with a television. We did it some, but then people were complaining about it. Your child's going to form an identity. And you are either going to play an active role in that identity being formed, or the world is going to play an active role. And so it's a tough one.
There's a positive to this, parents, is that you have so much say over all of this. You have so much say over all of this. And it's just a decision that you get to make.
Someone might ask, here we are, two mental health care providers, people that doing research. Well, someone might ask, well, why in the world is this so damaging to these children? I know pornography is bad. I get that. We're not talking about that. So So why is it wrong for them to look at pictures on Instagram that are just pictures of their friends or Snapchat or whatever? Well, the problem comes in that it becomes there's a couple of that really damaging social comparison. And so, for every, these people, these Instagram influencers, which I could make a whole podcast about. So, they're going to take 30 pictures to get one good picture that they then are going to use a bunch of filters on to make it look perfect. Just to give you an idea, there's a guy in LA that has a warehouse where inside the warehouse,
The airplane?
he has built what looks like the inside of a private plane. Okay. It's really fake. And he rents it out to social media influencers that take pictures of themselves in this airplane to make people think that they're rich. Okay. Holding glasses of champagne and stuff like that. The dude's a genius. Okay. He's a genius. Okay. So, but people see that and they're like, I wish my life could be like that. I wish I want to be like that, or I'm going to strive to be this person. And these are impossible standards to reach because these people aren't even reaching these standards. And so social comparison's a real problem. So that's why you find the amount of social media use the more social media use, the lower the self-esteem of the social media user, the higher the depressive symptoms, particularly in adolescent females. It's much worse in adolescent females than males. But adolescent males don't use social media as much as adolescent females. They're more likely to be involved in gaming. And you might go, oh, well, gaming, that's horrible. Well, the fact is it's not, okay? What the research shows is that what we always thought was wrong. And that is we were convinced that all these guys playing these shooter games are going to turn them all into schools and stuff. And there was all kinds of discussion around that, but no discussion around social media. Well, the fact is that's not turning these guys into, it might be turning them into like mental vegetables because they're not studying or having any social interaction, but it's not causing them to have low self-esteem and depressive symptoms because they're comparing themselves to anybody. But women are, young women are. And so the other thing is bullying, online bullying. And online bullying it's really kind of probably a bad term. Yes, there are certainly people that target someone and go after them constantly online. But the reality is that, in the ancient times, like when I went to school, as Matt will tell you, when I lived in the cave.
Back in the 1900s?
Right. Back in the 1900s, as people say now, back in the 1900s, if you went to school and there was a bully or someone said something ugly to you,
you got to go home.
That's not a good thing. It's hurtful, but you got to go home and you didn't have to hear about it anymore. And you didn't
see online that so-and-so had a party and you weren't invited and they posted it everywhere. Yeah.
Or someone responds, the bully gets online and says some nasty thing about you. And then somebody else goes, oh yeah, I always thought that or whatever. And there it is forever. You just can't get it. And so it's a different world. And we have to take a different approach because I'll tell you right now, the approach that we're taking is not working.
It's passive. We have to actively protect our children.
It's time for parents to be parents. And I'm not talking in some kind of authoritarian, punitive way. It's time for us to use some common sense here. So what do you do if you hadn't been doing any of this stuff? You just kind of let it go, and now you're worried about it. Your kid's like 16 years old. They're on social media way too much. You probably know you're on social media and online way too much. What do you do? Okay, well, I think if you got younger children, I think you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to delay. I'm not going to let my 10-year-old child have a phone or a smartphone. I'm going to delay. And I think for my older children, I'm going to have to start to work in moderation here. So we're going to have dinner time at night and everybody puts their phones in a basket. Or when people come home from school, their phone goes in the basket and they're only allowed to use their phone from 8 to 9 or whatever, or phone goes in the basket overnight. The thing is that when you think your kid has gone to bed, they're up there on social media or they're up there texting people. They'll lie awake all night doing that. So you've got to give them a break. Okay. And so you've got to build that in, but you also have to model that. You have to show them that you take a break, and then you have to build in real opportunities for them to have connection.
Absolutely.
So it's
Really
a
important.
tough question. I mean, it's a tough question. I know I probably make it sound a little easier than it is, but I mean, this is no joke. This is no joke.
Yeah, and we've talked about. I mean, I think if you was thinking about all the things that we've talked about on this episode so far, I mean, people might think that we are being dramatic about our responses to handling this technology and social media when it comes to young kids. And sure, think we're being dramatic, but the reality is out there. The research shows it, and the landscape of social interaction has shifted, and the way that we used to protect children needs to shift also, and that's coming slower than I think the landscape is changing. So, really, if you listen to this today, you're going, oh, I don't do these things, like I haven't been able to implement them. Don't beat yourself up. You can only do what you've done to the best of your ability, and work to make those changes and those shifts.
Work again over time. Working it over time.
Yeah,
Do
no one's
something.
perfect.
How about that? Do something.
Do something. The world is busy. We all have chaotic lives, and don't beat yourself up. Just make intentional shifts and changes, and talk to your friends, talk to your social supports, ask how they manage it. I'm sure that you will hear from almost every parent group, but yeah, it's a challenge, or that they're not doing anything about it. Right? It's a constant process of something that you need to be managing. But yeah, I don't know, Matt, before we wrap up, any last thoughts on the topic today?
I think you have to understand that if you haven't been doing anything and you have older adolescent children, they're not going to be supportive of this idea. So, and I think even if you have younger children and they have friends who have these things, they're not going to be supportive of this idea. So, and you're going to have plenty of parents who just do whatever they do, and that's just how it is. And they say, oh, it's no big deal and whatever. You can't worry about them, and you just got to worry about your own children. And everybody's going to be a little bit different, but I'm just telling you, the data are frightening. They're just frightening. Mm-hmm. And we have to make a change. And we can't look to Congress to come up with some kind of regulation that's going to, make it harder for whatever. Okay. That's just, if you hand the phone to your child and you don't know what they're watching, or you're not making time for them not to be watching it and you're on it all the time, it's kind of like you're partially culpable for what occurs.
Sure.
And I know that's rough, but you just don't hand your child a loaded gun and say, go out and play cowboys and Indians, and then be shocked that they actually hurt themselves.
Right.
So,
wow.
Nothing against playing cowboys and Indians.
That's what you were at. Well, thanks for that. And thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of Madness and Grace. Hopefully we will catch you here with the next episode. Thanks. Thanks for joining our conversation on this episode of the Madness and Grace podcast. If you found value in our discussion today, we'd love it if you'd subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode.
And if you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It helps others find these important conversations.
Sharing this podcast with friends and family members is also a wonderful way to extend hope to those who might be struggling with mental health concerns.
We'll be back next time with another candid conversation about madness and grace. See you then.